Right, good morning everybody. It's time for something a little bit different. Was going to stream this morning, but don't really have time to do that, and I get ready to go to work, etc. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different, something which probably has been sought after. A few people are probably after seeing something like this. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to actually run through sort of what we do. As soon as I bought some rudder pedals last week, those you are probably aware, I bought some Thrustmaster pension ones, which so far have been really good. They do slip around on the floor a little bit, but until I can move upstairs in the comfort of another bedroom, they're just going to have to do. But so far they are pretty good. But anyway, I thought I would delve into the world of engine failures a bit more, since they're not really done on the streams. I know Gavin certainly doesn't do them. I don't think he'd want to do them, to be honest, and I know he's got rudder pedals as well, but he still hasn't set his up, so it's never going to be easy without rudder pedals. So I suppose there's a caveat to all this. If you want to do any sort of engine failure or practice engine failure, I would strongly recommend you have a set of these. Do not rely on your twist stick. It's controlling the tiller there, but mine's obviously doesn't control the rudders anymore. But do not, I'd strongly suggest you do not do engine failures with your twist stick of your joystick, because you just probably won't have the control. Excuse me while I get a drink. So anyway, I thought I'd do something different in that respect. We're at Dalaman, is where one of my streams was the other day. Obviously I didn't particularly go too well, just the PC wasn't liking it. I've just a couple of things, taken the pushback tool helper thing out, done one or two other things as well, so I'm hoping that the PC copes a little bit better. I'm not actually streaming this. I was going to stream this live, because I thought people might be quite interested to see this live as well, and it could be a bit more interactive. But to be perfectly honest, this is quite a complex thing to do, and to be streaming this live and to be asking questions would probably just not really be that conducive to a very good stream, because things would get missed and I'd probably be too distracted. So I thought, let's just do it as a recording. I can upload this and then people can watch it back, and then obviously if you don't have any questions, you can obviously post on the comments or on Gavin's Discord server. We all know that we sort of generally mix around these Jet Pilots Discord servers, so you can always ask questions there. But anyway, here we are in Dalaman, where it's the holding points. The flight plan, I haven't got the whole flight plan in because it just wouldn't upload for some reason, so I've only put the initial bit in. But basically we're going to Dalaman to Glasgow. We've got a full load, 162 people, I think, and a little bit extra fuel as well, just just for reasons. So we're quite high weather, quite heavy weights, 73.3 tons. So very heavy. So we can see quite above maximum landing weight. So maximum landing weights on this aircraft is 64.5 tons. So we're below the maximum takeoff weight, only just by a couple of 100 kilograms. So that's not a problem. The performance we've done, I've basically just changed the winds. It's southerly winds at the minute in Dalaman, but I've just changed it to still winds, but still 30 degrees for a lower QNH, and all our speeds are pretty valid with regulated takeoff there. Takeoff rate of 82 tons, that's not a problem either. The actual departure initially is a Kekik 1 uniform. This is all really superfluous because I'm not actually going to do this, but it's all in there. And Kekik 1 uniform is effectively, where is it, this one. So climb straight ahead, up the valley here, and stop at 8,000 feet, that's the initial stop altitude. MSA is quite high, obviously. Terrain to the north, 7,000, 9,600, 5,000 to the southwest, 8,500 to the southeast there. So yeah, a lot of terrain to be aware of. It's always a good idea having terrain on your ND, certainly when it's nice weather and cavalcade like it is today. So we've all set up, pretty much ready to go. In terms of what I've done to the setup, this is where it'll be a bit more interesting. Everything's normal on the init page, there's nothing different there. A bit of extra fuel as we expected. That's the flight plan, which is as expected as well. Radnavs, what I need to show you is the emergency procedure, which, if you bear with me, hopefully this will work if I put you at the top and then shrink you, there we go. So hopefully you will now see this. I can't see if you can see this, but hopefully you'll see this. And this is basically the engine out procedure for Turkey. This is something that I've written. It's based off real world procedures. Each airline will have their own sort of procedures, but to be honest, they're all going to be reasonably similar. The terrain doesn't really change, so therefore the procedures aren't going to change too much, but each airline may have a slight different variations to the procedure just based on the aircraft performance that they're flying or anything else. But we can see here, this is Turkey. I can put a link in the description as well to this. If you did want a copy of this, I can just put the link, which you can just download for free. And this document basically covers most of the European airports and most of the main ones. It doesn't cover every single one. There's probably one or two that is still missing. There's one or two that I probably still need to add. Places like Skiathos, I don't think's in here. Calvi, Corsica, I don't think I've added that yet. So maybe one or two that's missing, which I can add at some points. But you know, you can see, you know, it's 215 pages. So it's quite a long document. But there's a lot of airports in here which will cover probably 99% of European destinations. But anyway, we can see here for Turkey, off runway 01, which is where we're going. I'll come back to the flash duct acceleration attitudes in a second, but it's a non-standard engine out departure. What does that mean, non-standard? Well, this is described at the top of the document, which I can probably go up and show you. So there we go. Standard strategy is fairly straightforward, commonly found at most airports, certainly if there's no terrain or obstacles considerations. Essentially, a standard strategy means that once your engine's secure and you've climbed above your engine out acceleration altitude, you can level off, accelerate, or retract the flaps on schedule. Once at green dot, you pull for open climb, set a sensible altitude, and set MCT. Once you're approximately 1,500 feet above the aerodrome, you can make your return to a designated holding pattern. So this is just basically, if you have an engine failure after departure, you can just sort of climb straight ahead, and then once your engine's secure and you're above the engine out acceleration altitude, you just level off, accelerate, and then when you're at 1,500 feet, you can make a turn back to your holding point. So that's pretty straightforward. Non-standard's a little bit more complicated, and again, I'm not going to sort of go through this too much or read it out, but basically a non-standard strategy is effectively when you've got sort of terrain or obstacle in the way. If you can't, or if there's not enough space to climb straight ahead for 10, 15, 20 miles, because there might be a hill or an obstacle in the way, you're going to have to turn at a predetermined point. And this is the big thing for a non-standard engine out departure, is you must turn at that predetermined point, because essentially if you don't, you might crash into something. So as it's sort of bold there, you must turn at that predetermined point if there is one, which again in 99% of cases there probably will be. Now the other differences with non-standard strategy, normally you can accelerate and or level off and accelerate on a standard strategy once you're above the engine out acceleration altitude. For a non-standard, there's a couple more caveats to that. So you can only level off and accelerate after a couple more points. So again, the engine has to be secure, and again there's various differences with how the engine is secured, depends on you know, what's happened to it, whether there's no damage, whether it has got damage, or whether there's a fire effectively. So you can level off once the engine's secure, but you also have to be above the single engine acceleration altitude, and the turn has to be complete. So there's a couple of extra factors there really, and the turn is the major one. So we'll go back to Turkey and Dalaman if I can find it. Actually, it was 180 something I think it was. Alright, Sweden. I thought I just heard my dog do something. Okay. So here we go, so non-standard. So it says at 4 miles from the Dalaman VOR, we make a left turn to the Dalaman VOR. Maximum speed 180 knots. Well, I mean that's pretty much going to be a given anyway, because you can't accelerate until that turn's complete anyway, so that should be fine. At the Dalaman VOR, you intercept the Dalaman 190 radial outbound, and then you continue climbing at 3,000 feet. You turn right past the Dalaman VOR, and then you hold there, which I'll show that in the secondary in a second. But here we can see the engine out acceleration attitude. Now this is red. Now why is this red? Well, the elevation of the airfield is about 20 feet, more or less, because we can see that on runway 19 that the acceleration attitude is only 20 feet above 1,000. So when the engine out acceleration altitude is red in this document, it means that the altitude here is above 1,000 feet. So it's higher than what it is normally. Now because this is now higher, we also have to increase the thrust reduction acceleration altitude. So this also has to be increased to match this. And the reason for this is, if the thrust reduction acceleration altitude was 1,020 feet, like it was on runway 19, but your engine out acceleration altitude is 1,983 feet, if you had an engine failure after thrust reduction altitude, which could be 1,000 feet, you're pretty much in no man's land. There's no terrain clearance or obstacle clearance guaranteed between the thrust reduction acceleration altitude and your engine out acceleration altitude. To compensate for this, what Airbus have suggested to do is you increase the thrust reduction acceleration altitude to match your engine out acceleration altitude. Now, all of these values as well, just add this, they've all been worked out in ISO conditions, so 15 degrees, 1013 hectopascals. These values do change marginally with slightly different ambient weather conditions, but to be honest, it's very, very marginal. For the sake of this, these are going to be perfectly good enough for what we need to use in the sim. So this is what's going to be reflected in the performance page. Again, I'll come back to in a second. But this is now red because this is now higher than 1,000 feet. So on this engine out departure, we can only accelerate once the engine is secure. Once we're above this altitude, so it's going to be about 2,000 feet really for cash, and once this turn is complete, once all those three caveats have been achieved, we can push to level off, accelerate, retract the flaps on schedule, and once we've got to green dot, then we can start climbing up. Climbing up to a safe sort of altitude, 3,000 or 4,000 feet, whatever we think's sort of satisfactory. So this is the engine out procedure, and we've put this in the secondary, so I can sort of show you that now. So if we just remember that, so 4 miles from Dalaman, we turn left, back to the Dalaman VOR, maximum speed 180 knots, and then at the Dalaman VOR we intercept the 190 radial outbound, and then we continue climb. At 3,000 feet, we can turn right back to the Dalaman VOR and hold there. So there will be a period, once this turn is complete, if we're above 2,000 feet and the engine is secure, we can actually level off. It might be below 3,000 feet, but we might level off at 2,000 feet, and then effectively just accelerate until we've got the flaps in, and then once we're sort of green dot, then we can continue climbing. So let's just have a quick look at how we sort of set this up in the actual FMGC. So here's the secondary, and so what I might do is, if I look at it on the map, just turn this down a little bit, so hopefully we can see this a bit better. So it's a little bit messy here, but we can see here an engine fail point. So I've put this in, and the engine fail point was Dalaman 4 miles. That denotes the engine fail point. So at 4 miles we make a left turn back to Dalaman, and then after Dalaman we continue south. So I've just got south DL again. I've just created this waypoint, and that goes down here, and then once we get here, or 3,000 feet, whatever's earliest really, we can make a right hand turn back to the Dalaman, and then we can hold overhead the airfield there. So this is what's in the secondary. We may not need to use this in managed nav. We may do. A lot of this is probably going to be flying in a selected heading, possibly first, until we're all settled, and then once we're all settled and the engine's secure and we sort of know where we are, then we can push basically to nav, and then we can just follow this sort of secondary flight plan, but we just need to make sure this is all sequenced once we do that. So that's all in. Looking at the performance as well, again, this comes back to what we were saying earlier. So here's the engine acceleration altitude, 1,983 feet, and because this is higher than the standard, or higher than 1,000 feet, we have to increase these thrust reduction acceleration altitudes as well, so they're both the same. So these are all our speeds, just again pretty standard speeds, just for a heavy takeoff out of Dalaman itself. So that's effectively it. That's pretty much how we set up the box. Also what we've done in the secondary as well is we've also put the performance back in, we've put an arrival back in for runway 01, an ILS, and the performance is all in there. Now I haven't put the barrow in just yet, and the reason I haven't done that is because we need to look at a couple of things, because we are heavy. So when we're above max landing weight, there's a couple of considerations for this. So if we need to return immediately, so if it's a fire we can't extinguish, then you know, we're going to need to do basically guarantee that we can get back in where we've just left, because we don't want to be flying around for a long time with a fire, because effectively that just won't work. You know, after about, I don't know, 15 minutes, the fire will probably burn through the wing and it'll be irrelevant anyway. So we want to make sure that we can land back where we've departed from. So if we look at Dalaman again, runway 01, it's dry, it's nice weather. I've put still winds again, it's actually a southerly winds at the minute, but I've just put sort of still winds just for the sake of this demonstration. So still winds, 30 degrees, 1009, and then landing weight. So what's our landing weight going to be approximately? So we're taking off at 73.1 tons. So by the time we get airborne, do the whole procedure, come back in, and we're probably going to burn easily 500 kilograms of that, maybe even a ton. So I suppose if we put in about 72 tons, there's a good chance we're going to be at that, if not below. So we're probably going to be about 72 tons. It's going to be maybe medium, although it does say low order brake. Ooh, see, you can see low order brake's already struggling a little bit. It probably will be max reverse. Manual landing, it would be a manual landing because we're over max landing weight, so we can't auto land above max landing weight either, so it has to be a manual landing. Flap full, I think that's definitely the case, and that's pretty much, there's I would have thought there should have been an overweight landing box. I thought there was, maybe there isn't. Okay, maybe that's just accounting the fact it's already overweight. So anyway, we can see there for 72 tons with medium order brake and max reverse, flat forward with order thrust on, our landing distance should be fine. So in terms of coming back to Dalaman urgently, if we really needed to, there shouldn't be any problems of actually landing. So we've double checked that on the ground, so we know that's not a problem either. The other thing we need to do when we consider this is the overweight landing QRH drill. Now, I don't have this publicly available to show you. I know Phoenix are coming up with a QRH pretty soon, and I have seen it, and the overweight landing checklist is in there, so that's going to be fine. Effectively, the only thing it really says is there's a couple of things. There's a performance criteria, so if you're above a certain weight, not so much over a certain weight, it's going to be overweight anyway, but it's only when you get to higher elevation airfields and higher temperatures, your go around climb gradient is going to be affected. Now, if you fit within that category where your performance is going to be affected, there's a very good chance that when you do a go around, your go around gradient wouldn't be good enough, so it suggests that you try landing it in config 3, I think it is, and then if you do a go around, you go straight to config 1, which improves your go around climb performance. Now that wouldn't affect us today because we're at sea level, so I know for a fact that we could still land in flap full. However, what we might not be able to do at our weights would be achieve the missed approach climb gradient on the actual charts. So we can see here a missed approach climb gradient of 5%. Now normally on two engines at normal landing weights you can achieve these with no problems whatsoever. On single engine, however, you're really you potentially could really struggle to achieve this. Certainly if you're above max landing weight, you might really struggle to achieve this, and you're never going to achieve that 5% climb gradient. So to mitigate this, you're given a shallower climb gradient, which is 2.5%, but to achieve this you now need a higher minimum. So normally the landing performance would give you this. FlySmart definitely gives you this. Unfortunately the DFB in Phoenix just isn't quite that capable yet, so it's got landing distances and factored landing distances, etc., which is really nice, but it doesn't seem to give you any go around climb gradients yet, which I don't know if they're going to do. I'm not even too sure how they'd work it out, to be honest, but you know, it would normally give you a go around climb gradients in your landing distance performance calculations. We don't have that, so I think effectively the safest thing to do is just assume that we're never going to achieve 5% when we're well above max landing weight and single engine. So what we'll do is we use the minimum of 850 feet. Again, RVR's not a problem. So what we'll do is we'll just put in the secondary 850 feet. Oh, hang on. There we go. 850 arrow, and that's pretty much set up for our arrival now. And we'll brief this once we get airborne in terms of the sort of strategy of how we're going to sort of do this approach, really, because again, a couple of things will be a little bit different. Going back to the other thing on the overweight landing checklist, again, there's not really too much to it, and that's pretty much covered the sort of performance side of it. The only other thing it suggests is then you either use the APU bleed to supply the packs, and this way the engines have got full performance. The engines aren't using any bleed air to supply the air conditioning or pressurization. The APU is. If you can't do that, which a little spoiler alert, we will come back to this in a minute, you have to turn the packs off. So that's the other thing you need to do. And then there's a couple of other things on there where you don't really aim for a greaser. There used to be something in the QRH about landing less than 360 feet a minute, because as soon as you land above that landing rate, it's then basically maintenance action, and use full reverse, and you put the brake fans on as soon as you come to a stop. So there's a couple of things you do, but again, it's a pretty simple QRH procedure, and I'm sure once Phoenix are released their QRH, it will be there for everyone to see. So that's pretty much it in terms of brief, in terms of what we're going to do. Like I've said, I've set this up for a failure, I've set this up for an engine failure on departure, so we're not going to do the full procedure. What we're going to do is just going to go straight ahead, and then at 4 miles we're going to make a left-hand turn to Dalaman, and I'm going to sort of fly it, I'm going to handle it as best I can. And the other big thing which probably needs to be mentioned on this is, obviously this is single pilot operations, so what really needs to be, I think, advocated on this is basically the golden rules of flying the aircraft, and that is basically fly, navigate and communicate. Now this isn't on VATSIM, there's no ATC, so I don't really have to worry too much about the communication side of things, but obviously this is single pilot, so you know, I'm going to have to fly the aircraft first. You know, that's the priority. Just point it in the right direction, do everything that you need to do, navigate where you need to go as well, and then once you've done that, you know, you can concentrate on the other little tasks, certainly in terms of ECAM as well. So the only real things that we want to do is get the aircraft, when we recognise there's an engine failure on departure, just pitch up to about 10 to 12.5 degrees, so just get basically the PFD, the pitch marker, just sort of on the shelf here, on this 10 degree shelf. Obviously use rudder to counter the yaw as well. This little yaw slip and turn indicator thing, that will turn into a blue beta target, so I do my best to effectively sense that. I've got rudder trim as well, I've got the Thrustmaster throttle contrum, so I've got a little, you can see it, little rudder trim button there which I can use. Let's just reset that, and once I'm happy the aircraft's safely in trim, I can engage the autopilot. Now we're also really heavy, so toga is probably definitely a consideration stage, so even though we're taking off in flex, I probably, once the autopilot is in, apply toga power. Then once we've got a positive climb, we get the gear up, and then effectively we don't do anything until we're effectively 400 feet above the ground, so as we're basically sea level, this is about 400 or 500 feet on the barrow. Once we're 400 or 500 feet on the barrow, then we can start diagnosing the failure, seeing what's gone on, reading the ECAM, confirming the failure as well, using the indications that we've got both on the upper ECAM and lower ECAM screens, and then we've also had possibly fault lights up here, which also effectively confirms that there's probably going to be a failure. Now, depending on where I am, what the priority is, the priority might be flying and navigating, so I will do ECAM at a sensible point, and if I've got time I'll start running through it and running through the ECAM procedure. Now normally on 2 crew, there's also a couple of other things that we do, so the thrust levers are the pilot flying's responsibility, so the pilot flying will move the thrust levers, but that will be on confirmation with the pilot monitoring. So if it's an engine 2 failure, pilot flying would point to engine 2 and ask that to be confirmed, and the pilot monitoring would say confirmed, and then the pilot flying can retard the thrust lever, and then every other switch, so the engine master switches, the fire push button switches, and any other guided switches, that's effectively pilot monitoring, but that's still got to be done with confirmation. So pilot monitoring running through the ECAM would then go, right, engine 2 fire push button, confirm, and pilot monitoring would confirm he's definitely got the engine 2 fire push button and say confirm, and then that would be pressed. So there's a few SOP disciplines that are going to be absent here because this is single pilot, so I will try and sort of replicate this as I can, effectively just pausing, I suppose, just double checking and making sure I'm doing the actual correct thing. But apart from that, that should be pretty much it. So that's the setup, and I think it's taken me about 20 minutes to run through, so I think the best thing to do is now just give it a go and see how this works. If I just get my cables out of the way so they don't get caught up. Right, so let's pretend to line up. So being clear for takeoff. Packs 1 and 2. TCAS is all on, I think. There we go. Right, let's see how this works. This will either go pretty well or it'll be an absolute disaster. Hopefully it will go okay. I have tried this once already, and it was reasonably successful. And the rudders definitely do make a big difference. So you can assume all the takeoff checklist is done. Takeoff runways all confirmed, and checked it's clear, the packs are off, TCAS is TARE, all the lights are on. And hopefully this will work where we get an engine failure. If it doesn't go off, I'll be a bit disappointed. And again, I might be quite quiet whilst this actually happens, because I'll be more interested in flying, and doing that I probably will be at talking, but I will try and talk about what I can. So here we go. Okay, Manflex 55 SRS runway. Checks. E1 rotates. There's the failure. Lots of rudder rotates. So get the nose up. 12.5 degrees. Keeping the rudder in. There's positive climb. Gears coming up. There's lots of failures. Watch that pitch, you don't want to see speed bleed off too much. SRS is starting to settle down now, so the SRS is actually looking pretty reliable. So left engine is dead, left foot, so right engine's working, so right trim. So right trim's going in. So just doing enough trim until I can take my feet off the rudders. Again, it's looking pretty good, so let's pull heading, just make sure we go in the right direction. So I'm relatively happy that's actually in trim, so AP1, 010 degrees, there's 4 miles, so we've missed the turn a little bit, that's fine, we're just going to make a left hand turn. Again, the priority is flying the aircraft initially, so just make that left hand turn. So I'm not too worried about the ECAM at the minute. Again, just fly the aircraft, avoid the terrain. We are VMC, Toga's available. So there's Toga. Man Toga. And now we can activate the secondary. Secondary's activated. And 1 or 2 is left turn to Dalaman. We're in that left turn already, so there's Dalaman. Insert nav Dalaman. Okay, we're clear this terrain, it's good, we're still VMC. And we're climbing, but we're climbing really slowly just because of this weight. So again, not too worried about the eco and then it just fly the aircraft. So again, lots of terrain around. Obviously the advantage is we are VMC, and if this was IMC, you're really sort of, I suppose you wouldn't worry about it too much because you can't see it, but you know, it does sort of just show how much of a threat this terrain is when it is this close. So anyway, here we go, going back to Dalaman. So we're doing the engine out procedure. Right, that turn is complete, so that's the first part of the caveats achieved. So we're still climbing, we're not above the single engine acceleration altitude, that's 2,000 feet thereabouts. We're still at, so let's start doing the ECAM. So what do we got? So engine 1 fail. Well, we used a lot of right rudder there, so that's going to make sense for that. Indications, M1's down, we've got no N2, no fuel flow, no oil pressure, that's looking pretty consistent. We've got fault lights here on the gens, that looks pretty good. So yeah, definitely I have to say that's an engine 1 failure, so that's confirmed. So the engine 1 fail, ECAM actions, engine mode selector is ignition. Engine mode selector is ignition. Thrust lever number 1, so this is me, so thrust lever 1, that is confirmed, that is idle. And engine master 1 off if damaged. Right, a bit of diagnosis to do here. Sorry, now we're above single engine acceleration altitude, still climbing. Now we're starting to turn south, so this has got the wrong turn in here. So this might turn the right direction in a second, but we're all heading. We don't want to turn left, we want to turn right. But we'll just carry on for the minute. So if damage, well, there's a couple of things we can see. We've got no N2, so the N2 compressor isn't rotating, so that's definitely a good indication that there is damage. The oil pressure's really low as well, so I'm fairly happy with those indications that we can confirm it's damaged. So engine master is number 1 confirmed, that is off, and actually that was a bit of a wrong thing, so now we're if no damage, so I should have done that before, sorry. And again, there's no N2, so yeah, you can see how the stress, you know, you can start missing things. So yeah, definitely don't want to turn left, I want to turn right, so it's going to go heading 190 because we're going south. That's a bit of a procedure. Come on, heading, thank you, sort yourself out. If damage, so it is damage, engine 1 fire push button, push. So engine 1 fire push button, that's confirmed, push. That's isolated all the hydraulics, the fuels and everything else from it. And then engine 1 after 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, discharge. So engine 1 discharged. Right, there we go, the engine is secure. So engine secure, turns complete above single engine acceleration altitude, so we can level off. So push VS 0, we're above S speed, so flap 1, the speed's checked to flaps 1. And what we want to do, if we look at the minimum hold altitude, it says 4,000 feet for the hold, so we should go to 4,000 feet. There's no point going to 8, so 4,000 safe. There's green dots. Well open climb, and then thrust lever MCT. So number 2, let's see if we can get this into MCT. There we go, thrust NCT open climb, auto thrust is engaged, that's what we expect. And at 3,000 feet, we'll just turn it up to that. Now we can make a right hand turn back to the Dalaman. So let's just see if I can ease this in the right turn first, just to make sure it goes in the right direction. And then direct, Dalaman, insert, right turns there, nav, and breathe. Right. What the fuck just happened? I mean, that was pretty severe. So that's the initial bits done. We're safe, we're over the sea, the engine's secure, we're not on fire. So the main threat to the aircraft has been sorted, but there's still a few ECAM things to sort out. We still haven't got any air conditioning on just yet. So let's just have a quick look at that, see if we can tidy things up. We're obviously down to 1 generator as well at the minute because we've lost engine 1. So, speed out start. Obviously, the other thing you would do would be attention crew at stations on the PA, just let the girls and the boys in the back know that's something that we're dealing with things, because they're obviously going to be panicking probably. Now, we probably would have done this earlier on, this attention crew at stations call, but just because it's single pilot ops, that didn't happen, and obviously there would have been a Mayday call as well to ATC, but again, that wasn't really relevant today. So now we're going back to Dalaman, we can hold there, and now we can sort ourselves out. So let's have a look at what's left on the ECAM. So it says engine 1 failed, if no damage, engine 1 relight consider. Well, we've already basically determined that it was damaged, there was no N2, so this line is no longer applicable. So we're going to ignore this because we're not going to consider relighting it. So it says shut down, which is what we've done. And it says if no fuel leak, imbalance monitor. So we've had a damaged engine, so there's always a very good chance that there might be a fuel leak associated with this as well. So we need to just consider how much fuel we've got and make sense of the sort of indications. We got, what's that, 700 in the left outer 5.3, so there's about 6 tons in the left tanks, 1700 in the middle, and 4.9, so it's at about 5.7 tons in the right. So we've used more on the right hand side than we have on the left, which makes sense because engine 2 is still running. So that is sort of sensible, I suppose. So we just need to monitor this now. So let's just time it for a few minutes and see if these values change. If these values don't change after 2 or 3 minutes, we can probably be safe that there's no fuel leak. If there is no fuel leak, then we can consider putting the cross feed on up here, because there's no fuel leaking off the aircraft. So we can just open the cross feed, and then at least the fuel is going to drain in a relatively balanced manner. So that's done. We're still looking pretty good. We're heading towards the Dalaman hold. We're still happy with where we are. 4,000 is still safe. That's the safe altitude on the chart. And effectively, we're just going to sit here for a few minutes until we really know what we're going to do with ourselves. So let's just carry on with the ECAM. So monitor TCAS mode selected T8. Now we don't have the performance now to follow any RA commands. So if we get a TCAS RA, because we're single engine, we don't have performance to do that. So we've now switched TCAS to TA only, because at least that way, ATC should keep us clear of traffic, but it's not going to set off an RA alert that we can't actually follow. So if Buffett, that's on the next line, and clear that. Max speed 240 knots. Right, there's no buffets. And green dots 230 anyway, so that's fine. Just make sure this turn happens. There we go, turn in the right sense. So there's going to be a few thrust variations, so it will sound a bit ominous at times, but we just have to trust it's doing its thing. So coming back, 240 knots, with wide icing conditions, we're doing that, so we can clear engine 1, air pack 2 off. Right, now this is the interesting thing. So engine 2 is working. So we've put fire extinguisher into engine 1, and if I can move across to show this a bit better. There we go, that's a little bit better. So we've put fire extinguisher into engine 1, and this has gone into all the plumbing and the air bleed system and the pneumatic system for the air conditioner as well. If we turn the APU on, in fact we will turn the APU on because we're single engine, so let's get this going. This is going to give us a generator back, so at least it's going to remove the threat of just being on a single generator, and I'll turn back to on in a second. If we turn the APU bleed on to supply the bleed air for the packs, the problem with doing that is this is the left hand side of the aircraft. There's a cross bleed valve here, but it's to the right of the APU bleed manifold. So if we put the APU bleed on the left hand side, when we've got fire extinguisher unit in the left side, it's going to blow all the fire extinguisher units through the system, whether it goes from pack 1 or pack 2. Now we can close the cross bleed quite easily enough, which is closed. So that now isolates the right hand side, so we can turn Pack 2 on now because engine 2 is working fine, so we can supply Pack 2 with the engine bleed very happily because we close the cross bleed, so this is effectively completely isolated. But the problem is we can't now use the APU bleed to supply any air conditioning packs because all the fire extinguisher stuff, contaminant that we've put in to the pneumatic valves is all in this side of the aircraft. So we can't have it in pack 1 at all because if we put the APU bleed, it's going to just basically infect pack 1 with the engine fire extinguisher unit as well. So we can't really use the APU bleed now, which is a bit of a bugger. So when it comes to landing, as per the QRH checklist, which we were mentioning earlier, it says if available, use the APU bleed to supply the packs. We can't do that because there's fire extinguisher sort of within this system. Now if engine 2 had failed, we could have done that because we could have closed the cross bleed, pack 2 would have been off, and then pack 1 would have been isolated. So there wouldn't have been any fire extinguisher this side, it would have been on the right hand side. So we could have closed the cross bleed and then we could have used the APU bleed to supply pack 1. But we can't do that today because it's engine 1 that's been knackered, and that's the one that we've put the fire extinguisher unit in. So that's pretty much it now. So those are the initial ECAM actions complete. Obviously before we would have started this we looked at any OEBs, but this is an engine, so there wasn't any OEBs. That's Operating Engineering Bulletin, which you don't really need to go into just yet. There's 5 minutes as well, so let's have a quick look at the fuel before we forget. So what did we say? So we've about 7 tonnes in the left, about 1700 in the middle. Well, that's a bit less because it's taking fuel from the middle, and what's that, 5.7 in the right as well, which is exactly what we wrote down 5 minutes ago, minus a little bit less in the middle. So I'm happy there's no fuel leak. So I think it's fair to say that we can open the cross feed, and that's going to open and go green. So now the fuel is taken from both the middle tanks, then once this is finished it'll take it from both tanks as well to supply engine 2. So we're not going to get a major imbalance. Let's disarm those spoilers because we don't need those for the minute. And we've almost tidied ourselves up. So those are the initial actions complete. Well, it's not really, sorry, it's a lie, we haven't completed the initial actions, but that's just the initial ECAM drills. So just before we get into the actual secondary failures, which will come to in a sec, we're just having a recheck of where we are. So again, near Dalaman, still in the hole, still 4,000 feet, still nice and safe, weather and terrain is still pretty good, so we're constantly making this sort of update. So now we can look at the secondary failures. So we got a land ASAP amber. So this is pretty severe. Land ASAP red is more severe, but land ASAP amber is pretty severe. Lost an engine, that sort of makes sense. So now we want to think, well, we need to get on the ground pretty quick. Well, we've already done a landing distance calculation on the ground. We're over max anchor weight. We've already worked out that we can land back on 0-1. So we've got one option straight in front of us. We know that's a viable option, is just land back here. It's a good airport, it's going to have fire services, otherwise we wouldn't be in here in the first place. There's obviously good passenger handling facilities as well, because we wouldn't be here if there wasn't. So we know that this is already a good option to come back to. We can consider the other options in a second. So we've got an air bleed, secondary failure. Again, this is pretty consistent because it's just saying pack 1 is off. Well, again, that makes sense because engine 1 isn't working, and we've basically kept pack 1 off because there's potentially fire extinguisher unit in those pipes, which could be a contaminant. So we're going to leave that. So again, that air bleed message is pretty consistent, so we can clear that. The electrical page, again, we've started the APU, so we've now got another generator back online, so that's not supplying AC bus 1, which is supplying the AC central bus. So we've got a pretty decent redundant electrical system there. I mean, we're not in perfect shape because we've lost Gen 1 because we turned it off, but it's a little bit better than what we were before the APU was started, where we were just a single generator. So again, that's pretty consistent by the electrical pages there. So we can clear that. The hydraulic page, again, that's pretty sensible. You can see the amber engine-driven pump. Well, that makes sense. We've turned the engine off, so the engine-driven hydraulic pump isn't going to work because basically the engine's not working. So the PTU has taken over, so the PTU is basically supplying the green hydraulic system. So we've still got 3 hydraulic systems because the PTU has taken over pressurising this one. Now it's going up and down a little bit, but you know, it's working. So we've still basically got a really good jet in terms of hydraulics, but unfortunately engine 1 just isn't doing much of the work anymore. So that makes sense, we can clear hydraulics. Then we just got a few ECAM messages, the hydraulic PTU is working, which we know that. The APU is available. Landing lights, do we need the landing lights on? They're creating a bit of drag, probably not. Again, we're just tidying up a few things which we normally do after takeoff. But again, these weren't a priority. You know, the priority is just flying the aircraft. So APU is available. Center tank feeding, that makes sense because we were heavy and there's fuel in the center tank, so it's feeding from that. And then the fuel cross feed is on because we've done that because we basically ascertained there's no fuel leak. So we've put the fuel cross feed on to take care of any fuel imbalance. So now we come down to the status. So we look at sort of three things. We look at resets, any expanded checklists, or anything else that we basically need to consider. So resets, well obviously engine 1's failed. Are we going to reset it? Well, we've already decided that it's damaged, so no, we're not going to reset this engine because it's damaged. So we're just going to leave it as is. You know, maybe it was a bird that flew into it, got no idea. I didn't see anything, but you know, it gave up. Is that enough? Can't be asked to go back to Glasgow, so it's just thrown in the towel. So we're not going to reset that. The expanded checklist, yeah, we've got the QRH overweight landing checklist, which we can run through. We can actually get it up on my company iPad. We can look at that, which we've already discussed it. That's the sort of main one. Just let that fire up. Are there any other expanded checklists that we need to consider? Nothing that I can think of. We're not auto landing because we're above max landing weight. There are things now we're going to be putting messages into the company. We're going to be telling them, probably, I mean, they're probably going to know anyway, maintenance is going to know because they've got a live data link with the aircraft, so they're going to know that we're not in very good shape. And I'm sure through the grapevine they've probably heard that we're now holding. You know, there's probably a very good chance we would have been squawking 7700 as well. If we'd been talking to ATC, I'm sure they would have said squawk 7700, which would have lit us up pretty much on every single radar screen between here and the Mississippi. So everyone will know about it. So that pretty much covers those things. I'm trying to think what else is there to do. Obviously speak to the crew in the back. So we've done a detention credit station, so all they're waiting for now is us to give them a NITS brief, and a NITS brief is just basically nature of the problem, our intentions, the time it's going to take, and then any special instructions that they need to know about, which we will do in good time. And we'll give that to the cabin crew, we'll give that to ATC as well in a bit more of a sort of condensed fashion, and we'll also need to speak to the passengers as well, because it's probably pretty much guaranteed that they're all going to be shitting themselves. Certainly the ones on the left, they're going to be pretty panicky. And prior to this point, probably a bit earlier on, we would have given them a very quick PA as well, just to say the situation's well under control. We're still safely flying, which we are. I mean, look at us, you know, a single engine been going around in the hole for the last 15 minutes. Nothing's really been going wrong. What we've been doing is using a bit more fuel. Still a nice day. So really, with the exception of being one engine, it's all pretty good. So that's covered those. We've got the status, we can read the status, avoid icing conditions, not in icing conditions, that's fine, so don't really need to apply that. And the distance procedure, well, we've already done that, we've done that on the ground. That basically said, you know, we're overweight, you know, we've lost some systems as well, and this is why I was just thinking, is there an engine, is there anything else? Flight controls, oh. Let's just have a quick look, see if there's anything on here which I can do. Engine, oh there we go. Reverse unlock, no that's it, shut down. Push, so there we go, so it's a shutdown. If engine fire push push, which it is, and if ice accretion, well there's no ice accretion, so neither of these apply. So there's no real landing distance procedures, there's no flight control problems, you know, they will still work. Hydraulics, the slats, the flaps, they will still work. You've got no problems here yet. A little bit wobbly. So there's nothing extra that we need to do other than what we've already done. And we can go back to this. Let's go 0000. Go on. 30 degrees. 1009. 72 tons where we are. So we've already seen that a landing distance procedure has been applied to this, and we're good. So that's fine. It says, if no engine 1 damage, well, we've already ascertained there's engine 1 damage. Consider engine 1 relight only. Well, we're not going to do that because it's damaged, so that's irrelevant. Cat 3 single only. Now this is an interesting one. So our landing capability now because we've lost an engine, we've effectively lost a generator. Our our landing capability is now dropped. So when we press the approach push button on the FCU, if we're doing an ILS, where normally we'd get Cat 3 dual, AP 1 and 2, we're now only ever going to get Cat 3 single because of the reduced landing capability. Now, it's fine here in Dalaman because it's a cavalcade day, we're not expecting to autoland. But if the weather was a bit crappy, we could consider auto-landing the aircraft, but we could only do that if we were below maximum landing weight. We can't single-engine auto-land above max landing weight. It's not been demonstrated, not in the 320. We can kind of do it in the 319, I think up to about 69 tons, but not in the 320. So what have we got? What was our max landing weight? 64.5, I think it was. And you can probably see how little I'm actually paying attention to the aircraft by doing this 64.5. I'm not really that interested in flying it. I don't need to. The automatics are doing a fantastic job. They're flying the aircraft. It's going around the racetrack with no problems whatsoever. I've got no issues with what the aircraft is doing from an automation point of view. It's flying itself with no problems. What I'm interested in now is, getting the information, to make a decision. So I'm now looking at the system, diagnosing what's going on, looking at our options, and basically formulating a best course of action. And obviously this would be a little bit quicker, probably with somebody next to me and a bit of help with maybe cabin crew at the back as well. But I'm not interested in looking out the window. I mean, why should I? What do I need to do that the aircraft's not doing itself? So I'm more interested in just looking at the systems. So anyway, we're Cat 3 single now, 64.5 tons. Well, we're burning, what's that, 3 tons? So yeah, 6. That's a good 6 tons over. So we'd have to be sitting for probably another 2 hours before we're anywhere close to below max landing weight. Well, that's not really sensible when you're single engine. It's land ASAP amber, and it's ASAP amber for a reason, that suggesting you want to get on the ground pretty quick. So we're not going to burn that fuel to get below max landing weight. So Cat 3 single again is a little bit of a it's a bit superfluous really, because it's a landing capability, but we're not going to consider using an auto land. But if we were below max landing weight and we were going to single engine auto land because we were below max landing weight and the weather required it, if the weather is 300 meters in fog, then we could. But because it's Cat 3 single, we can now only use Cat 3A minimum. I wonder if we've got any charts that could show that. Just wondered if Glasgow had. There we go. Nice, Edinburgh, where to do. So Edinburgh in 06, so we can see now. So we got Cat 3B and Cat 3A. We're Cat 3 single, so we can now only ever use Cat 3A minima. So that means a decision height of 50 feet, so that would have to go in the FMGC if we're doing an auto land, and an RVR of 200 metres. So the RVR has to be 200 metres or better. So if it said RVR of 300 metres, it's like, great, we can do that. We can go down to Cat 3A because we're Cat 3 single. And worst case, if we had another failure of any sort which dropped us to Cat 2, we could possibly go down to Cat 2 as well. But we can't do Cat 3B now because the aircraft doesn't have the landing capability to do that. It's now what's known as a Cat fail passive category. So you've got fail operational, then you've got fail passive. But this is a little bit irrelevant because we're not below max landing weight, so we don't need to affect that anyway. Consider it. So in operative systems, again, this just sort of summarises what we've lost. So wing anti-ice, we can't use wing anti-ice now. Again, it's not really necessary because it's 30 odd degrees, that's fine. But the reason we can't use wing anti-ice is because we're only single engines. There's not enough bleed pressure from one engine to use the bleed air down the wing ducting for the wing anti-icing, and we can't use the APU bleed for wing anti-icing. One, because the fire extinguishing unit's gone into the system, so we can't use the bleed air anyway. But even if we could do that, the bleed air is not strong enough to keep the valves open. So the wing anti-icing valves, it probably won't show on here because they're not. So you've got wing anti-icing valves somewhere around here, and they're spring loaded closed but the APU bleed pressure is not high enough to keep both spring valves open. So it's only the only bleed pressure that's strong enough to keep the spring valves open is the bleed air from the engines, which obviously does their respective anti-ice valves anyway. So the APU is not strong enough to do that, or the APU bleed air is not strong enough to do that, and the last thing you want to do is have one wing anti-ice valve open and one closed, and then have a symmetric wing anti-icing going on. So we don't have wing anti-icing, that's fine. Cat 3 dual, there we go, that basically confirms that we're Cat 3 single. Engine 1 bleed's not working because we shut it down. Pack 1's not working because it's not on. Gen 1's not working because it's off, because engine 1's and the green engine 1 pump is not working either because that's associated with the engine 1. So that is the initial calculations complete. So we're now back to effectively a normal jet in terms of what it looks like in terms of the screens. So we've now got to the position of what we're going to do. Well, this is where we now will run through our sort of failure management model of sort of reviewing everything, which is effectively DODAR, which means it's write it down, it's easier. So we've got DODAR, and I always prefix it with T. So I always say T DODAR. So T stands for time. So much time have we got? Well, we got 12.5 tons of fuel. We got loads of time. We're not leaking any fuel. So in terms of fuel, there's no rush whatsoever, but we are single engine, and like I said, we don't really want to be flying around on a single engine for that long. So yes, we have a lot of time in terms of fuel, but everyone in the back is going to get a little bit antsy, and we don't want to risk overstressing the other engine or anything else going wrong with that one. So I think in terms of time, yes, we've got fuel, but we want to get on the ground reasonably quickly. First D is diagnosis, what's gone wrong. Well, again, that's pretty obvious. We knew that pretty quickly. Engine 1's failed, it's got damaged. We're not restarting it. So that's it. There's a few secondary failures that's associated with the engine 1 failing, but apart from that, everything else seems to be working pretty well. Options, what are our options? We already know Dalaman's one option. That's over our shoulder, we can go there. Antalya is another option. Whether we'd need to go there is another thing. But we've got a couple of airports around here which we know are pretty long. We could certainly consider them if we needed to. So we've got Rhodes, that's just across the seas, so that's really easy to get to because there's no MSA worries about, so we could go to Rhodes potentially. Again, it's a good airport, nice long runway, and plenty of decent passenger facilities. We've also got Antalya, which is a large international airport as well, so we know we can probably go there, but however, to get there we have got to climb over a lot of hills, so we would probably go there as a last resort. Maybe Rhodes would be another option if we couldn't get into Dalaman, but we need to know why we can't get into Dalaman. I mean, maybe we've damaged the runway, maybe the engine has exploded and damaged the runway, maybe there's sort of shards of concrete or something that's closed it, so we would hear about that pretty soon, and if we heard about that now, we would probably just abandon this idea now and probably head towards Rhodes straight away, because it's not too far away. We can certainly do that on a single engine. It's probably only about 10-15 minutes away if we needed to, where going across to Antalya when we level off to get there, it's a little bit further away, and we've got to go all over that stuff, which is probably not the best idea. So those are our options. Decide what we're going to do. Well, as a commander, I'm pretty much happy. I'm already happy that we can get into Dalaman. The runway's not been affected at all, so let's give Dalaman another go, and then we'll do a nice little night stop there because we're going to be AOG. So that's our decision. Assigning tasks. Well, this is where myself, I'm going to start assigning tasks to people. So I may say to the FO, right, if you just fly the aircraft, I'm going to manage everything else. I'm going to speak to the cabin crew, I'm going to speak to ATC, I'm going to speak to the passengers, we'll speak to the company if we can, got time. You just fly the aircraft and basically keep what's happening now. Make sure it's all set up in the box, make sure it all looks good, and then once you're happy, we'll have a quick brief, and we'll make an approach back into Dalaman land, and we'll brief how we're going to do that in a second. So that's the assign of the task, and then the R is just a review. So is that a right decision? What are the benefits? What are the risks for doing this? The benefits are it's a good airport, it's a nice long runway, we can get in, there's passenger facilities, there's firefighting facilities. it's not a bad place to sort of dive into with this sort of problem. You know, Rhodes is equally as good if we need to go there. It's just a little bit further away. You know, Antalia's not too bad, but there's terrain to consider for that respect. You know, we'd obviously get the weathers for both these airports as well. Look at those, but I'm fairly confident that Rhodes, which I think is probably that over there, Rhodes is going to be Cabo K as well. But we'd have a look at the weather and just make sure that, you know, what we're doing is pretty much the safe decision. So once we've done all that, then we just probably have a quick review of what's in the box. So again, this has all been set up on the ground. So we've got the hold in, still going around a circle. See, the aircraft's so good at doing this. So go back, and then basically we're going to do an ILS. And this is pretty simple. It's just an ILS into Dalaman. So ILS Zulu. We're doing nice long final, I think. We're 4,000 feet now, so I'll probably stay at 4,000 feet and then just go out to about 15, 16 miles and then come back in, intercept at about 12 miles, 4,000 feet would be 12 miles for the glide slope. So a nice long final. We can configure nice and early. So flap 1, flap 2, gear down probably as we get onto the glide, and then maybe flap 3 and flap 4 after that. We've discussed the minimums already. We're going to use the higher minimums because we don't think we're going to achieve this climb gradient of 5%. And then the other big threat obviously is the go around. So we just need to make sure this is in the primary, which it should be. So straight ahead's at about 5 miles, 6 miles. F is 6, yeah. So 005 radial 6 miles, left turn back to the Dalaman VOR, is what it says. 005 6 miles. To say overfly, is it overfly? Possibly, possibly not. Anyway, that's in there. There's the go around in there, which is good. The missed approach altitude's probably 4,000 feet is what we're at. Crossing at 4,000. Max 185 knots to inbound the VOR, so we need to consider doing that, so we might have to stay in flap 3 to do that speed. And obviously the go-around actions as well. I'd probably leave the automatics in quite a long time until I'm very happy we're going to make the landing, and then I'll disconnect. Because I don't really want to do a single engine manual go-around. If we do need to go around any other points, we can use the automatics. And then this can fly a single engine go-arounds quite easily. So just thrusting Toga, go-around flaps. Bring the flaps in, aiming for a flap 4 landing, so it should be flap 3. Mantoga SOS nav it should go into. Positive climb, then we get the gear up, and then just hopefully the aircraft will just fly the go-around procedure without any problems. Maybe a little bit squirrely, because it's single engine, so it may be a little bit rough, but hopefully we won't be doing that. In terms of landing, medium order brakes, that's what we've done for the landing distance calculation. It's going to be full reverse. Got to be somewhere. There's my charts. There we go. So yeah, medium order brake, full reverse. And then we'll stop on the runway. Put the parking brake on. Tension cruise stations again, just make sure the aircraft's still fine. Put the brake fans on, because we've got those. And then I'll probably just speak to the fire chiefs, because it'll probably be the fire crews that come out to the aircraft to make sure we're all okay. So that's mainly it. The ILS is on. India Delta Lima Mike is the ILS, which it is. DME is co-located with that as well. Company message, not too sure what that is. Probably MOC going here, alright. MOC. Anything else? EasyJet Ops. Delay. Shit, Sherlock. So that's pretty much it. So we're pretty much set up for the approach. So that's all good. The overhead's all set up. Fuel-wise, we're below 72 tons now. 71 tons we're good at. Fuel. So that's still looking pretty good. Almost drained most of it out of the centre tank. APU's obviously scavenging a bit as well because that's on. So I think we're good to go. So next time we're outbound, all I'm going to do is just extend the outbound leg, which is effectively this here. We're going to go a bit further. This is 10 miles. We want to go a bit further, so maybe go outbound for about 50 miles, I think, and then come back in. Come back into this waypoint here, the centre fix here, and then just pick up to land. So that's the plan. And all the time you're sort of doing this DODA pretty consistently. So again, speak to the cabin crew, give them their NITS briefing. That would have been done probably a while back before I'd sort of discussed this myself. And then at a sensible point, we'll probably just hand back control from the FO, and then I'd start flying the aircraft. Not manually, of course, just take control back, let it do its thing. 190, yeah, about 190 outbounds. There's not really any wind to count to consider. Let's go. So this 225 is a little bit low green dark, 230. Let's activate the approach phase. On the approach checks, that'll be done again. And the only other QH drill there is a single engine straight-in approach, and that sort of effectively says if there's only going to be any level off segment, land flat 3, well, which is kind of what we're doing, but just for the performance reasons, I'm going to land flat 4. Oh, I'm thirsty work this. How long have I got? Oh, I've got a few hours. Good. Right, so that's gone. Let's get the lights back on again. Hopefully the cabin crew would have got secure. Hopefully in the back would have calmed down a little bit. How good are we down here? That's all good. They're all good. That's all fine. So again, we're just constant checking. That's what I need to do. I'm not going to turn away. So 189. Let's tidy up the box. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. So the box is tidy up now. So we've just got the ILS. Let's just go 90. So flight plan's good, RadNav's, that's all fine, that's done, progress, you've got the runway there if we need it. Performance, we've looked at this is all fine, reasonably high VAP because we're heavy, landing config full, minimums there, go arounds, we are single engines, so let's put that in 4,000 feet, that's a single engine acceleration actually, so if we do go around we don't level off and accelerate until we've got to 4,000 feet. Fuel, got it's irrelevant, loads of fuel, you know that. The secondary is left alone as well. So now we're just waiting for the next event, which is probably about 15 miles away. Interesting what the trim is. So on approach we want about 777, so we want about 70% N1, 7 units of trim, and it's about 7 degrees. It's 7 something else, there's another 7 I can't remember what it was, but yeah, about 70% N1 we want, maybe a little bit higher because we are above max anyway, so maybe closer to 80%, 75-80%, and we're going to need about 70%. Now the other thing I'm not going to do as well is we've got a little reset button here, which is also on the Thrustmaster quadrant. I'm not going to press that because I don't like doing that. Some people do, some people don't, but as you land in the flare, some people ask to reset the trim, but that then obviously makes the nose, skew from one side or the other. I personally don't like that. I'd rather just the trim set it as it is, and I would just use the rudder just to align the aircraft. So I don't reset the trim. Alright, there's 15 miles. See the glide slope is above us, which makes sense. Alright, approach trace activated to manage speed. Right, that should be good, so do a nice intercept, about 040 degrees. Again, just last bit of paranoia check, everything's looking good. Mainly I'm just looking if there's any more warning lights. We've got a fault light in general and a fault light in the engine one pump. Again, it's all consistent with basically the fire push button being pressed. So I just want to double check nothing else has popped up without our attention. Alright, there's an intercept, sound the localizer, lock blue. Could have extended the sense line, doesn't really make any difference. We're visual, we're happy where we are. Right, there's lock start, so start slowing down, so we're below, only just below VFE, sort of thing. So let's just get 5 knots below VFE. Now flat 1. So the other thing with the overrate landing checklist is your speeds, your characteristic speeds may be above or actual VFE speeds like they are here. So speed is exactly 200 knots. So let's just arm this. Right, so there we go. Cat 3 single, AP112, that's what we're expecting. So what we need to do is we need to select 5 knots below VFE. And then as we pass below VFE, we go to the next configs. There we go, flat 2, geared out. We can manage speeds. So we just have to manage the speed configuration because our characteristic speeds. Glide slope start 4000 set. Flat 3. And flat 4. Right, so status has popped up again. There's nothing new on here. This is all as expected as we saw before, so we can clear the status. And now we're just going to leave the aircraft to sort itself out. The automatics are still in. It's going to fly the approach. It's going to sort the rudder trim out. There we go. We can see about 8 units of trim, so a little bit more than usual because we're a bit heavier. And yeah, about 80% in one, so again a bit heavier than VAP. VLS is about 141. So 141, so that's pretty good. Don't really want to lose any energy, so I might just add a knot to that 147. Just so we got a bit of extra speed. Landing distance is fine to do that, so that's fine. And then that's basically it. We're just going to monitor again. So we're all set up, we're nicely configured. Stabilised nice and early. Going around track looks like it should be good. Okay, get these on. Spoilers behind. And then at 2,000 feet we should see the eco memo pop up. Radio altimeter is alive. For the landing checklist. go. It's the landing checklist system cabin is secure for landing. Going altitude 4,000 feet is set, and the eco memo is landing, no blues. So, if any luck, the ATC tower's given us clearance with visual. Everything's fine. Leave the automatics on. I'm going to leave the automatics on until quite low down, maybe about 400 or 500 feet. Because if it needs to go around at any points below our minimums, then it's just easier to let the autopilot do it. Just enjoy the view. At least it should be a decent night stop. No, an opposite probably think, oh, you can fix it now, you come back. That's what they usually say.
100 above.
Right, 100 above the minimum, so let's check the visual. You can see there's a little bit of wing
Minimum.
below that. So continue. Visual. So a little bit of right wing down, this makes sense. So as I shut the power, I do expect the wing stable. The nose just to swing slightly due to the thrust coming off. So automatic's coming off. Flappy's looking good. Again, just flying it down. Don't mind if I'm a tad low.
$100. 50, 40, 30, 20, retard.
So full reverse, spoilers, reverse green, decel. Probably not the smoothest landings, but I'm not too worried about that. There we go. Idle. Kept on the tarmac, that's the main thing. Manual brakes, and we'll come to a stop. Stopped very nicely. Good stop. Parking brake on. Brake fans on. And attention crew stations. And we'll just sit on hands for a minute, make sure everything's looking okay. Obviously the fire crews there be coming towards the aircraft, surrounding us, probably talking to us either on VHF 1, 116 is normally the fire frequency. High vibration on 1, don't know where that is. There we go, out the brake fans. Brake temperatures are okay, they're going to be going up. So, well, that's pretty much it. And there we are, safely down. So anyway, the next course of action, assuming you're all going to be okay, you could technically single engine taxi off of this. The hydraulics are fine, you know, the brakes are still working. The PTU should still take over the green side even on the ground, but we've got the accumulator, so yeah, there's always a chance you can just single engine taxi off, taxi back to stand, and then just deplane the aircraft. But the rest of that's pretty straightforward. One thing you do need to do if you want to sort of taxi away, you can release the parking brake, and if this is modelled correctly, is it going to move? Let's have a look. Yeah, I think it is going to move. When you stopped, you normally have to disarm the speed brakes for it to move again. The park brake stays on, I think, until you've disarmed the speed brake. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I don't think there's much else to say, guys. The rest of it will just be taxiing, parking the aircraft, writing the stuff in the tech log, and then going back for tea and biscuits. certainly back to the hotel for a drink. I think that's what I'd be doing. Yeah, there we go. That's a single engine failure and a non-standard departure at Dalaman, with basically most of the sort of fault finding, diagnosis, failure management in the air as well. Back in with a single engine landing as well. So hope you enjoyed that. Any questions? Leave a comment in comment below, and yeah, I shall see you all soon. Cheerio.